Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live here on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 107.7 FM, 105.3 FM from beautiful New Orleans. This evening's segment is partially sponsored by Folgers Coffee. Thank you, Folgers. You know, we love you lots. Or should we say muchly? It's lots. Anyway, tonight we welcome back Dr. Kathleen Ann Ball to the show, and she will be discussing, I guess, all her further stuff when it comes to her discovery of the Knights Templar cave in Brazil. It's a lot to swallow. I hope you all had a chance to go and see her production, her documentary on Gaia. I blurted this out after last night's show. It definitely will catch you all up. It's been up for several awards. It's already won awards. It's just unbelievable. And it's all pre-Christopher Columbus. So rewriting a bit of history there. So she's going to go back in time a little bit and discuss what led her to all of that. So in order to participate for the show, you're going to have to head over to the UFO Paranormal YouTube page and join us there in chat so we can actually interact with you on the spot. Otherwise, there are another 7 places to be able to see the show throughout the network's Facebook channels and Twitch. Also, we will be able to see all of your comments. We will just not be able to type anything to you. The only place that that can happen is YouTube. Sorry, guys. So settle yourselves in and hopefully with a couple of Folgers, and we will be bringing Kathleen on shortly.
Or a jug of Folgers. Or
a jug of Folgers.
If you're me, ice cold.
Okay, I've got to go and accept this.
Yes.
Got that one.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I've got that all out there. I'm all ready.
Good.
I missed her the first time. It was after my dad had passed, so I missed her badly. And
yes,
looking forward to seeing her face to face and chatting with her. We comment on Facebook, but really briefly. So I'm looking forward to meeting her.
Yeah, she's a doll. You'll love her.
Wow. Yeah. Researcher, traveler, and explorer of the ancient sites. I mean, there isn't anything that she hasn't done. You mentioned the Brazilian Templar mystery is the story of Dr. Kathleen Ball's discovery of a cave hidden in a remote area on the outskirts of a small Brazilian town, a cave carved by the Knights Templar. But she's also got an incredible childhood that she's going to be talking to us about, and a Sufi master, which I don't even know what a Sufi master is. I had to double take that one. And I'm looking forward to learning about that as well. She is amazing. And she's got a few things coming up as well as her series.
She does. And again, this documentary has been nominated for all kinds of awards. It's won some awards. I've personally watched it, and I mean, it's amazing. There's so much research that went into this, and it just blew my mind when I saw it, and I had to approach her and say, you really need to come and talk about this, because seriously, this is like the find of a lifetime. It really is going to rewrite history a little bit, well, a lot of bit. But, you know, from what I've been learning in just communicating with people here, there's a lot of stuff coming forward that is literally rewriting history. And I'm just trying to figure out, there we are. All right, I'm on a total other page here, but we don't appear to be live. It says live. You're there. Why do I not see video?
It should be. Teresina Cordova Resende, si me sientes.
There it is.
So entiendo español, otras lenguas, nada. No, nada. That has to come on your part. Yeah.
Thank God you could get that.
In España or Mexico? Maybe she'll answer me there. She's writing on Facebook, so.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So have Spanish in your back pocket.
Nice. Oh,
Hi,
hello.
Jessica.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Like I said, especially after last night's show, I've had a couple of other people reach out, and being also from the Team Templar North America, and just with a little tiny snippet, and I was just like, oh, for real? It's a little tiny snippet. So things that are happening really are going to be history changing, and I'm hoping that they're going to come back and join Sean on a future episode because, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it'd be cool. They've been posting some really, really amazing photos on their Instagram. You can follow them on Instagram, Carl Cookson and Hamilton White, and you can find them on Facebook. Although I think that you'll have more interaction with Hamilton White on Instagram. I believe he spends more time there. Carl does most of social media.
Yeah, that's the Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. They are also part of Team Templar North America. So they've joined forces. So they're actually coming on, guys, next week. Next Thursday, they're going to be joining us.
You might want to catch yourself up.
It's very exciting. It's very exciting. I know. We always have fun with them. There's the lady herself.
Hello, beautiful Dr. Kathleen.
Hi. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Doing good. Doing really good.
Good. Yeah, your email bounced back at me, and I was just like, what?
I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't access my email, my Templar email from my laptop suddenly. I don't know what's up with that, but I don't have time to mess with it. So.
Yeah, that's okay. As long as we've got you, that's just great. So I hope you've been keeping well.
Yeah, we've been good. We've been really good.
I hear that the documentary, which I did see, of course, and it's just spectacular, has won awards, is up for more awards.
Right.
That's very...
We've been selected for 3 different awards, and we've won the Chicago Indie. We've won an award. I don't know what it is yet because they haven't sent me the laurels, but and we've won a couple of awards for best historical documentary and best preservation of culture from the NGO, which is a UN affiliated organization. So
that's amazing. Congratulations. It's so exciting. And you know, it's just going to keep coming. The more people actually see this, it is spectacular. I gave it a big shout out last night because I told everybody to go and watch it so they can be sort of in a loop and know what the heck is going on tonight. So, hopefully. Yes.
And I was informed by my agent yesterday that we're going to Cannes. We've been selected for an award at Cannes in France.
Wow. Congratulations. That's a big one.
Yeah. So that's huge. That's really huge. And that may open the doors for us to finish this series. And that's what we're hoping. So we'll see what happens with it.
Oh, fingers crossed for you. This is a story, like I say, it's history changing, and it really needs to be told, and it needs to go the distance because it's just spectacular. The last time you were on the show was December 30th. Right. Can you just recap briefly on that, just to bring people up to speed a little bit?
Yeah, we talked about the background of the discovery of the cave, and a little bit about my background in terms of in relationship to my research with the Templars, and in France, otherwise in 2009, and have been handed the keys to the dungeon in Dome, which was a really interesting experience. And if I hadn't done that, though, and if I hadn't photographed all the graffiti in the, in the dungeon that the Templars left between 1307 and 1312, I wouldn't have recognized this cross as being a Templar cross. When I got to Brazil in 2015, it knocked my socks off. I was just shocked to see this in the middle of nowhere in Brazil. So, and then we did briefly talk about that there are 3 more caves that I will be going to see in July. So,
yes. Is that still a go with the whole world on its
I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with my photographer right now. His mother's had some issues, and having to care for her in Canada. They live in Canada, in BC. So. I'm not sure what's happening with that, but I'm definitely going back, and I have connection with another person that can actually conduct the interview or film the interviews that I have already set up. They're already waiting for me, and I have the Kalunga people over there that have come to me and sent a message to me that they're open to an interview, which is huge because they don't ever do that.
That's
And
phenomenal.
yeah. And then also, I'm going to be going back to spend some time with the Amazonian tribes that come into Valparaiso every year and have been doing so for several thousand years. And they are the ones that are rumored to have brought the Templars into that area. So I'm going to be, I'll be interviewing them too. And I have to get an interpreter because they don't speak, they speak some Portuguese, but they have their own languages in the Amazon. So
Yeah, their own dialect.
Yeah.
Right. Their own dialect.
Probably antique.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hoping is that, there may be some artifacts that were handed down. There will be some oral traditions. These people, that's what they do. They pass things down from generation to generation via oral stories and, myths and stories. And that's what happens. So they really hold on to their history. And since they're still coming into Valparaiso all these years later, there's a good chance that they may have some information for me.
It sounds exciting. I think that, let's face it, you're obviously meant to find it all because you just stumbled onto this thing in the first place. Like, who does that?
Right. Well, I just finished my book, and it's at the publishing editor right now, and she just sent me back my first 15,000 words to go over her corrections, and this is a tedious process. I had no idea, but I enjoy writing. Though I did find out that I do enjoy writing. So my book is going to be about the process of what happened through my life. We'll talk a little bit about tonight about, how does someone just bump into these things? It just doesn't usually happen. But, the progression of starting as a child being, asking all these really odd questions and always being the researcher, as a child, I was a researcher. As a child, I was always observing and wanting to know about what was going on in the world, why we were here, creation. At 2 years old, I was asking these questions. My dad said I was just really an odd child.
Wow.
But, and what happened? I developed some really interesting mentors, not all of them were alive, Leonardo da Vinci was my primary mentor, long gone, but he taught me how to draw, I poured through his notes. And, he's the one that eventually led me to the Templars in a very odd way. And then Maya Angelou was another one of my
adored
mentors.
her.
Yeah, just because of her life. And especially I came back to her again in my early 30s after the near-death experience because she had gone through a lot of the same stuff that I had gone through. And she was a magnificent woman. She just emanated light. When I saw her speak, I just felt like, my God, this woman is a sun. She emanates all this energy and light. She's so powerful. And, and Joseph Campbell was another one of my mentors. I firmly believe in that, the hero's journey. And I feel like that's what I've been on, is this hero's journey, this Grail quest, which is the name of my book, actually. It's the Grail's quest. It really is. It's a good old-fashioned boots on the ground Grail quest. It's just unfolded over the last 20 years into this magnificent, discovery of this cave, and now 3 more caves that I'll be going to see and discover. And I was going through my photos too, since we talked last. I was going through some of my photos from the last trip. And I actually took some close-up photos of some of the graffiti in the cave.
Wow.
And there's shields and swords in there. So I don't know if you remember, but what happened when I got into the cave, I'm halfway, well, maybe not, about a third of the way into this cave, just because I'm so excited to get back into it. And all of a sudden I look around and I'm surrounded by probably 2,000 or 3,000 spiders and bats.
See, that would have been it for me.
I would have
That's what I'm okay
screamed.
with.
I would have screamed
Spiders,
so
not
loud
much.
that the U.S. would have heard me.
Yeah.
Oh my
They're
Lord!
They're on the ground. They're on the walls. They're everywhere, and the bats were just flying all around. And on a couple this kind of breeze, but I didn't realize it was bats. Well, anyway, so when we turned on the light, we actually saw these bats, and it was just, it was like, okay, so I'm going to back up. So I took some quick pictures, just really quickly snapped some photos, and got out of the cave.
Oh my God.
So we've come up with a plan for the next trip, and we're gonna just light a fire inside the cave and gently smoke these creatures out so they can come out, and then we can go in, and then they can come back in when we're done, without harming them.
Right. Well, I mean, aren't the bats supposed to eat the spiders?
Well, I thought maybe, but I didn't see him eating.
No, that's just not good. Let's go in with just like a little net and a helmet or something. That is just fantastic. The graffiti must have just been mind-blowing to see that firsthand. Or did you discover most of them in the photos?
I discovered in the photos. I took the photos. Initially, I took the pictures so quickly that we really didn't focus on those. We didn't blow them up or anything. I didn't blow them up right away. In fact, I just instantly blew them up to look, and I thought, well, that's really interesting. And my photographer reminded me that, you took those initially. It was like, oh, okay. But I got caught up in the cave itself and the cross and all this. So now, I'm looking at a little closer at what's inside the cave. And of course, we know that the cave was a gold mine too. So
yeah.
That took on a whole nother trajectory.
So what are you hoping to find in the other 2 or 3 caves?
I really don't know. I was on a fireside roundtable discussion this morning with Hamilton White and Carl Cookson and Gretchen Cornwall. Yeah. And a few of Sean Williamson was there, and Wayne Murphy was also participating in that. And, they talked about caves in particular. The Templars were everywhere they went, they had caves and underground tunnel systems. Yes. And they did like to write graffiti in these places. That was something that, that seems to be consistent worldwide so far. And, but what was interesting to me is they both mentioned that they felt that their all the relics that they've discovered and things just kind of fell into their lap. And what I saw was parallel. Isn't that almost exactly what we were talking about on the last show, right? That this falls into our lap. And, they were mentioning that when they had a relic that was expensive, all of a sudden the money just appeared, from somewhere. That's exactly what's been going on with me. It's not been relics, but it's been discoveries. And it's like, just the path unfolds for me. The person I need to talk to, the cross expert in Portugal, contacts me. Next thing I know, I'm getting this interview with this man. The 2 historians in Brazil, next thing I know, I've got interviews with both of them within a week of each other. Just all these kinds of things that just keep happening. And not to mention, which we'll go into tonight a little bit more, my path has been interesting.
To say the least.
To say the least. And this is the first time in my book, and I'm actually going into in depth with the spiritual experiences that I have never put out there.
Wow.
I just have never put out there before. And, not many people know that I was 18. So what was it? 1974, I guess it was. I was in Van Nuys. I had moved to Venice, California.
Right.
And,
I love Venice.
16. I was married. My husband was was incarcerated for good reason. And anyway, so we parted company, and I decided I wanted to go down to LA and become a model, right? So I went down. I was carrying my first son at the time, so I was pregnant with him, and I hooked up with some friends down there, some people, and we actually were living on the rooftops in Venice for about 2 weeks.
That's awesome. That is. That's like free spirit stuff.
Yeah, with our little hibachi and our, our
Yeah.
sleeping bags. And well, we actually slept under the POP pier the first night.
Wow.
Pier to rooftop.
That would be awesome, actually. I mean, I love Venice. It's the type of place you could do that
Venice
with.
in the 70s was absolutely amazing place to be.
Yeah.
It was powerful. I mean, there was, Lenny Bruce was down there, his wife, Honey Bruce. I mean, all these people, the horn player was a good friend of ours, I mean, there was just so many people down there, artists, musicians, and it was just a powerful place to be in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, that's where I was. I was in the midst of that and doing a little bit of modeling and working at restaurants to pay the bills. And I had my oldest son down there. And we finally got a place in Santa Monica on Hollister Street.
Wow, very nice. Santa Monica also.
For $85 a month.
Not no more.
Not even the water.
No.
I was less than a block from the beach.
Wow, definitely.
Yeah. And, and then that place, we had cockroaches really bad. It was a communal building, and I woke up about midnight, in the middle of the night. I'd painted the whole place, right? Expectant mom. I had painted this whole place, and I went to bed, and I got up in the middle of the night because when you're pregnant, you have to pee a lot. So here I go. And I turn on the light, and there's cockroaches just everywhere.
Oh, because they come out at night, right? They like the dark.
Oh yeah. So, as soon as you turn the light on, they scatter. So anyways, that prompted me to want to move. And so we decided to move into Venice, and we moved into this place called the Pink Palace on Speedway and Horizon. So we're right on the beach. It's this old 1930s building.
Oh, beautiful.
And I'm right on Speedway. I'm right on the beach, and 110 a month.
Wow, still for Venice.
Yeah.
Isn't that normal?
So it was, it was a really interesting place, and I met a lot of really interesting people. In fact, I was introduced to the I Ching down there. That was the first time that I'd ever seen that yellow. I don't know if you remember that old yellow book. One of the original I Chings that came into the West was that book. And I was introduced to some Eastern philosophies at that time. It was just powerful times, really powerful times. We'd all get together on the beaches at night, and you'd have huge bonfires, and musicians would come out, and artists would be everywhere and paint.
It's kind of like Bohemian coming in off the old, like the love and peace and the hippie era, and into the artist era.
Yeah, it was just powerful times. And, it was during that time, shortly after that, I was working at this restaurant in Van Nuys, and it was on the corner of Van Nuys and Van Nuys Boulevard, and I forget now. But anyway, and I walked into work, and I was like 5 minutes late, and I was concerned about that. and it was really interesting because this man came up to me. He was sitting at the counter, and he came up to me and he said, "Would you like to know your future?" And I just looked at him like, okay. I said, "Well, I have to get to work." And it was just really odd because my boss waved me on like it was fine. I was like, "Go ahead." And I was like, well, that's not normal. Anyway, I sat down with this man, and it turned out he was a Sufi master. And this was the first one. And so I handed him my palm, right? I handed him my palm.
That's a different thing, yeah.
Can I just interrupt for a minute?
He curls my hand back up, right? He curls my hand back up. He says, I don't need that.
Oh, thank you. I'm a rookie.
I'm sorry, Dr. Kathleen. What is a Sufi master?
A Sufi master is someone, they're found in India and Egypt, and they have mastered, a lot of them have mastered the elements.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they've been around for generations. They were around during the time of the Templars, when the Templars were in the Holy Land. In fact, I have reason to believe that they probably interacted with Sufis also.
Oh, wow.
Wow. So that's a bit of a thing to be approached by one.
Right. And
okay.
this was the first of two. So, he unfolded this story to me about what was going on in my life, because I wasn't really sure what was going on. At age 11, my parents had separated, and my mother didn't handle things well. And I was out of the home by the time I was 15. I was on my own, married, and 16, boom, boom, things just happened really quickly. And what ended up happening, I was exposed to a lot of different cultures, which I think was part of my journey. I needed to develop that level of tolerance and understanding and compassion. And so here I am down in Southern California, and the Sufi master tells me, he says, well, you're actively on your path. You're going to be dealing with a lot of karmic issues for several years, and you will have 4 children. And you'll have multiple marriages, which is what happened. And he said that when you're in your early 30s, you're going to have some really interesting experiences, health concerns, and you will die a spiritual death. And I thought, wow. I mean, I'm 18 years old. What does an 18-year-old do with that, right?
Mm.
And he proceeded to tell me that I would have a number of other challenges, health challenges. And if I was able to surmount those challenges, that the rest of my life, I would actually realize my heart's desire. And I never forgot that. And I never forgot it.
That's
I
pretty heavy.
Tucked it away. I just sort of tucked it away into the back of my mind and went on with my life. And I dealt with some really wild experiences. I was married a number of times. My first husband was shot and killed. So after that,
I'm so sorry.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jeez.
So right.
Yeah. And how old were you when that happened? Like how
my
old was?
son was 13, so I was 28,
Wow.
28
Wow.
years old.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was shot and killed, which we had been on again, off again, and anyway, so but there was always that sort of grounding security, even though it's dysfunctional as could possibly be, there's sort of security, that there's someone there that you can run to if you need to, kind of idea. And so that dissolved, and I was out on my own. There was a freedom too. I walked away from everything. I mean, we had a lot of money, and I walked away from all of it. Yachts, homes, car collections, you name it. I didn't take a nickel. I didn't take a stitch of clothes. I didn't take a photograph. I didn't take anything. I walked with my 2 sons, and that was it. Boom, I was out. So I basically started my whole life over. The problem was I rebounded and got together with somebody else who I'm really glad I did, because I have a beautiful daughter as a result of that relationship. And she's an amazing person. I used to tell her,
your mom.
I used to tell her when she was little that I ordered you from God, because she looked exactly the way that I had imagined her. And I told the doctor from the time I found out I was pregnant, I says, I'm having a girl. And he says, how do you know? I says, I just know, because, and then I made all girls' clothes. The whole time I was pregnant, I sewed all her clothes and crocheted them. And then I had this whole wardrobe for her by the time she was born. And so it was a good thing she was a girl. Yeah. So, but her father was an interesting person, and that relationship, it had to end. That was not a healthy relationship. And anyway, so there was a point where I was actually dating this man for a couple of years, who was a bodyguard for Waylon Jennings, and we were asked to go on the road with Willie and Waylon. So it was 22, I guess, at this point. This was my husband and I were on a hiatus. And so I was 22. It was my 22nd birthday, which is an interesting number for me, because 11s and 22s have always popped up in my life, and 23s have always popped up in my life as being very significant. And so, at 22, we went on the road with Willie and Waylon. We started in LA, and we went all the way up into Walnut Creek and Concord and up into Tahoe, and played the Harrah's. That was when Willie and Waylon did the Harrah's for the first time. And they called us the hillbillies at hurrahs.
That sounds like a lot of fun, though.
It was a gap.
Yeah.
But I was heading on on another trajectory that probably wasn't the healthiest. And so, so Willie nailed me down. I mean, we talked. He said, "Come on, let's talk." And we went in and talked for about an hour. He was supposed to be on stage. Waylon was covering for him. And after that, I emerged with a completely different perspective on life.
Thanks to Willie.
Thanks to Willie.
That's amazing.
It really was. I really owe him a tremendous, tremendous sense of gratitude I have for him, because that was a pivotal moment in my life. And I started in a whole different direction than where I was. I never forgot. In fact, one of the first portraits that I did, and what was it? Full bust portrait that I did. Well, actually, it was Leonardo da Vinci. The second one was Willie Nelson.
Wow.
And he was the only portrait that survived in my house fire.
Wow. There's a little bit of something.
Yeah. Wow. It was pretty.
And I don't believe in coincidences. I know you don't believe in coincidences. Because we talked about that.
Right. So, yeah, so that happened. It changed my whole thing, and I settled down to be a mom, after that. And but I still had some difficulties. I still had a lot of issues that I was dealing with. And in 1987, I guess it was, my daughter was 2, so I moved up here to the mountains, where I live now, in the Sierra Nevada foothills. Nice. And right before my 33rd birthday, it was about 3 months before my 33rd birthday, boom, another CP master came to me in a restaurant again. So, this was a little more powerful. This guy shows up in the restaurant, sits in a section that's not mine. He pays for his coffee ahead of time, doesn't ever drink the coffee. He sits down in the section, asks the waitress that was in his section to get me by name. And she said, "There's a man over here wants to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." And I went over and sat down, and it's like, how did he know my name?
Yeah, it's a little bizarre.
Yeah, well, it gets more bizarre. So, we're talking, I'm waiting to hear what he's got to say. And what he does is he looks into my eyes like he's looking into my soul. And he says, "What are you doing?" That was it. He said, "What are you doing, Kathleen?" And I rattled off a bunch of BS. And he says, "No, you know what I mean." And it just like went into I don't even know how to explain it. It felt like he was just speaking directly to my soul. Anyway, the guy got up. He never drank the coffee. He got up. He walked outside the restaurant, opened the door, walked outside the restaurant, and disappeared into thin air in front of me and 3 other waitresses. Boom. Poof.
Is that normal for Sufi masters to be able to come in and out of dimensions?
I was going to say, is that a prerequisite? You got to learn how to go on.
Wow. Like, seriously, how did you feel at that moment? What were you thinking after that?
I thought maybe I was kind of losing it.
Yeah, I would feel the same way, spiritual or not.
Well, thank God for witnesses.
Yeah, well, immediately I was stigmatized, and the other waitresses looked at me like, "What is going on here?" They didn't want any part of me. And
keep your weird friends away, Kathleen.
Yeah. Well, I was fired 3 days later. I was fired.
Wow.
And it was I had never been fired before in my life, and it was for something I didn't do, which they later found out that I didn't do, but it was all meant for me to hit a spiritual bottom. And that's what ended up happening. It was about 2.5, 3 months later, I had a near-death experience. And when that happened, then I realized that all of these things that had happened that led up to that, the CB Master, everything in my life, every single minute had led up to that moment. And when I came out of the near-death experience, my whole life completely changed. I mean, just completely. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do anything anymore. Nothing. I have not since that time taken anything or drank anything or smoked or nothing at all. My body has been completely pure. So, which was a good thing because I did have a liver disease, and you know about that,
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
yeah. So that sent me on this trajectory. But that's when the spiritual experiences started really intensifying in my life. I had odd people. Yeah, I had odd people come to me out of nowhere. I stood between violent people that were going at it with each other and was able to create peace. I don't even know how.
Did you just know that you were going to be unharmed? That was
Yeah.
just something that you had to do?
Yeah,
You just did it.
I just did it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Something
I just
happened
did
on
it.
that other side.
Yeah, and this has happened 2 or 3 times in my life.
Yeah, that
that's-
is crazy. Wow.
I'm still trying to get by the whole Sufi dude. Like,
Yeah.
do you feel like maybe he was a guide? Do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because it's profound. Like, what are you doing? And you're like, blah, blah, blah. No. What
Right.
are you doing? How
Right.
did you know exactly what he was talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You
In
know?
my soul, I did, and after I had the near-death experience, I knew exactly what he meant. It haunted me until I had that near-death experience. His words haunted me. And in fact, I got into I got into Eckankar for a brief period of time, trying to get into, expand my spiritual awareness with that, which, was whatever. I mean, I don't think that's where it was at for me. Obviously, it wasn't, but it didn't hurt. But that's what happened is it caused me to understand that I needed to expand my awareness on the spiritual level. And when I had the NDE, it was no doubt, because what I experienced during the NDE was the most powerful experience in my life that I've ever had. It was just unbelievable. I believe what I saw was the future of mankind at some point in our future.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, when I came out of that experience, I've been committed to bringing that into reality, whatever I'm supposed to do in this particular lifetime to make that happen. And I'm seriously committed. I mean, I've never, ever questioned that. And all of these things that happen in relationship to the Templars and discoveries have all been related to that path in some way. The nun that I came across in France, when I was on that same trip in Dome.
Again, that was, can you touch on that for anybody who's listening for the first time? Because that was really amazing. Yes, Amelia. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. For Amelia. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we had left Dome, and the curator at the museum, after I took the keys back to him from the dungeon in Dome, which my husband still shakes his head about. It's like, why did he give you those keys? You could have walked away with them. You could have done whatever. But I didn't. I took him back to him, and then he proceeded to tell me. He asked me first. He said, "Do you know what the Templars were protecting?" And I said, "Well, I have a general idea. I know they were protecting the people in Jerusalem, the pilgrims that were going in and out of Jerusalem." And I said, there's some indication that they had a relationship and understanding of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. He said, yes. He said that was their primary intent, was to protect the bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And I was like, wow, okay. All right. So I'm hearing this from somebody else, in addition to the research that I had already done. And so I said, well, can you suggest any other places to go, that we might find some more information? He says, well, you can go into Marseille. You can go into Marseille. There is some artifacts and things there. Well, we went into Marseille. All right. We did. My husband and I went there a couple of days later. about 3 days later, we got into Marseille, and I immediately felt drawn to this one particular cathedral. So I told my husband, I said, let's go there first. So we went, we opened the door, nobody, it was locked. So we went and got some lunch, and we went back. And as I went to reach for the door, this nun opened the door, and she took one look at me, and she grabbed me, and she started crying, and she started telling me, I have been waiting for you, madame. I have been waiting for you. I learned English in college so that when you came, I could speak with you. And she was probably in her late 50s at the time.
Wow.
Lord.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. My husband took photos of us because he was pretty shocked.
To say the least. But then that just seems to be your life's journey. It's just all these shocking moments.
By
You
that
know,
time, it was no surprise to me, really, other than the fact that no one had ever, it had never been quite like that, that kind of experience. I mean,
mm,
I was a little taken aback, but she hustled me off into her studio, her little study in the back, and she drew a map for me. And she said, Madame, you must promise me you will go. You promised me that you will go. You have to go here to Saint Baume. You must go. And I said, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I wouldn't question that at that point. I'd be like,
Right.
sure, whatever.
Right.
If you want to come, can I bring
Yeah.
your family somewhere? Can I bring you a meal?
Yeah. So we
Wow.
drove into Saint Maximus the next day, which is just below Saint Baume, but we couldn't find Saint Baume.
Oh.
We couldn't find it. And so my husband said, well, we're supposed to meet these people down in Monaco. We had some friends down there. We were supposed to meet. The 4th of July was coming up, and we were supposed to meet this friend of ours down there, entertainer. And so we left, and it just kind of kept eating at me. And anyway, so we were down there 2 or 3 days, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was like, I have to go back to St. Baume. And so I happened to draw this hut in my sketchbook. I woke up and I drew this little hut, and I didn't know what it meant. But anyway, that little hut happened to have been in St. Baume. It was on top of the mountain when we got there. But so we drove back, and this time we drove right to St. Baume. No problems, no nothing. Back then there wasn't a lot of signage. It was difficult to find, but we drove right to it. We stayed in the convent that's down below the mountain, by the grotto where she lived. And we got up the next morning and we started walking up the mountain. And it was just a really spiritual experience, the whole thing. I felt like I was in this cloud, this bubble, this sort of spiritual bubble.
Mm.
We started hiking. We started walking up towards this grotto, which is it's a hike up the side of a mountain, where she lived in this. It's a grotto. It's many, many thousands of years ago. The mountaintop flipped over, and it created this water inside this mountain and in a grotto that you can actually walk into, and it's huge. It's really pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's where she lived in intercessory prayer for 17 years is what the rumor is. The myth is that she lived there for 17 years in intercessory prayer. After she parted company with Lazarus and Martha and, the other people that she was with, and her children by that time were raised. So then they were in the positions that they were supposed to be in. So anyway, so we're walking up there, and the whole time we're walking up there, I've got butterflies landing on me and birds, like they're talking to me. They're like right into my face, and I'm chirping, and I just felt like really happy. Everything just felt really happy. And I felt like I was being led up this mountain by the birds and the insects and butterflies. And so we get up to the top, and the Catholic Church had taken over the grotto. They turned it into a small chapel. So there were stained glass windows, there were icons, all over the place and stuff. And when we walked into the church, I immediately felt this dense energy pushing on me. It's just pushing me. And so I sat down immediately into one of the pews, and my husband sat next to me. And I immediately went into a meditation, and hour and 45 minutes. I was just into this meditation. And what I kept seeing was all this dark energy swirling, and faces, these dark, sort of cloudy looking faces came into my face. And then they swirled up and out of the space. Once that was complete, then this light came in and just filled the whole place with this light. It was amazing. And so when I come out of this experience, my husband nudged me because a bishop had come in with 4 priests to conduct the Eucharist for the local people and I guess tourists or whatever. And so he nudged me because they were coming up to us with juice, for this Eucharist ceremony. And I opened my eyes, and there's one of the priests is looking at me, and he's just beaming, and I got this big smile on my face because I had just gone through this amazing spiritual experience. And I just feeling like so light, and this wonderful experience. Anyway, so we get up, we drink this juice, and we get up, and we're at the end of the procession of people that are going up to the bishop is to bless this bread, and then you're supposed to eat it. It's a cracker. Well, I get up to the bishop, and he grabs the cracker out of my mouth and starts swearing at me in French.
Nice. Okay, then.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
What comes out of my mouth is, "Please forgive him, Father, for he knows not what he says."
Okay, he must have taken that really well.
Which ignited a huge explosion. He was furious with me, and the 2 priests pick him up by the arms and take him out of the chapel.
Wow.
Wow, that's different because usually you have to be Catholic to take in place of the Eucharist. So, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's really bizarre. But then again, your whole life is pretty much like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I knew what was going on. There was spiritual warfare going on. That's what it was. I knew what it was. And so I knew it wasn't him, and I knew he didn't have any there was nothing personal about it. And so but I'm wanting to stay in this space and just walk around and enjoy the beauty, the light, and just all this wonderful feeling that I'm feeling. And in comes the priest about 10 minutes later, and he says, "I am so sorry, Madame. I thank you so much for what you have done. We are so sorry. I can't explain. The bishop, I don't know what happened, but we apologize. You're welcome to stay as long as you wish. Is there anything that we can help you with?" And I said, "No, I just, enjoying the space." But I think on some level that he knew what was going on. I think he knew what had happened because it was the same one that was smiling at me when I came out of the experience. But that was on the same trip where, I had gone into Dome and found the cave. And so then that was actually the last part of the experience for that trip in 2009. But and I still to this day, I don't know exactly. I've talked to other people that have been conduits for similar experiences like that in different parts. And I have a vague memory of a past life in Egypt where we cleared land and did things like that, cleared energy from people and cleared energy from land and from spaces and from, areas, that ceremonial areas and things that had become contaminated. So apparently I had some experience, I guess, in some previous life or whatever. But the nun coming, hugging me like that, I felt like it was a predestined moment that we had somehow or another agreed to do this at some past moment, several lifetimes or whatever. But that's the feeling that I got, is that she and I had agreed to do this at some point to clear this and prepare the way for what we are experiencing now in this time. What we're experiencing right now at this time in our history is a rebirthing. We see, rebirth of the Templars. We see the Cathars. All these spiritual groups are empowered now.
Yeah, because they're about to make some we're close to an anniversary for them, aren't we? The Cathars and Returning and
Absolutely.
Prophecy,
Yeah.
if memory serves me correct.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of pagan groups. If you look around, there's a lot more. There's like a resurgence of interest and a rebirthing of these concepts and belief systems and ways of life uh, that
Yeah.
are.
You
Yeah,
see it. You see it. I mean, you
yeah.
just have to look around and I mean, I look at, Carl and Hamilton, yourself, at Wayne and Team Templar and Gretchen and Sean, and discoveries are being made here that are literally rewriting history.
They are.
Like this isn't just finding a marker someplace. This is rewriting history. This is pretty colossal. And the
Right.
fact that you're all joining together to
Exactly.
me is even more amazing.
To me, that's very powerful to me.
It is. It
Today,
is.
today when I was in that group with the roundtable with those people, with all of us together, it was really powerful. It felt
Yeah.
really powerful. And we're going to do it again, or we're going to come back again. So, typically 10 years ago or 20 years ago, that may have not taken place. There might have been a competition or whatever. There might have been those other issues going on. But today, for all of us to come together like-minded was a beautiful moment. It was really a powerful moment. And we all have the same agenda, which is to bring forth, the history, the relics,
The truth.
the truth, exactly, the truth of the Knights
Yes.
Templar.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think. Do you think right now it's because the world is ready for it, and maybe they weren't ready for it 20 years ago? There's no way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the world is really poised and ready for this now.
I think so also. I really believe that. I think people are ready to accept, that. I mean, everybody always knew Christopher Columbus wasn't the first one here, but there are those like, no, academic says, no, this is the way it is. And a lot of people don't want to stray from that sort of stuff for whatever reason. But now you have so much information. I mean, I think the whole North America, the whole Templar in North America to me is amazing because it goes to show you there was nothing off limits. And coming here to start fresh, it just shows you like they got away.
Yeah.
Many got away.
Right. Many did. And, the thing that we talked about today was we also, I agreed with the comments that were said today that when the Templars went into La Rochelle on October 13th, 1307, and everyone thought that they escaped in ships and went straight to Scotland. Well, now we're not so sure. We're not so sure.
Well, some may have, but
we think that many of them went left.
That's right. That's right. I believe that.
Yeah, and went into Portugal. They went into Portugal. And there's a tremendous amount of evidence for that. The Portugals were so powerful in Portugal. It really was. As Freddie Silva has stated,
yes,
I totally agree.
Yes.
Portugal is really a Templar nation.
It definitely. I think that was the one book, as I know when he was on, I said, I was sort of fangirling a bit the first time. I'm like, I'm sorry, but yours is absolutely the first Templar book I think I've ever read that made any sense to me. Just like, yay. It's like, but it did. It made so much sense. And he covered so much. And I love how now everybody else is coming forward with their own discoveries and just adding to the story.
Exactly.
And it's rewriting history.
Right.
And the world better brace itself because it's going to be, I say life altering because it means something to me, but it is going to be history altering for sure.
I do too. I totally agree. Yeah. And 2 of our awards were from the NGO, which is a international UN organization.
Wow. Wow.
And what that organization, what that actual award ceremony was commemorating Martin Luther King and Peace Initiative,
Nice.
and I'm a part of that. I'm also an ambassador and part of that, and
Very
I
nice.
very much believe in their agenda, and we're tying the Templars now into the indigenous cultures. Specifically,
Yes.
I am with the indigenous cultures in Brazil, who I believe led the Templars into Alto Paraíso. And also the Templars in the Holy Land, they were connected to the Sufis, were, they're a very ancient culture. And the Ethiopian kings and the Ethiopian people, while they were there, the Egyptians, but they were connected with a lot of these indigenous cultures. And what the purpose of the NGO is, what we are trying to do is raise the awareness of the indigenous cultures and what they have to say, because they have a tremendous amount to offer the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous amount. They carry oral traditions and medicine that is desperately needed right now. I mean, our Western medicine has got some serious gaps. I mean, we really need solutions to problems rather than just,
it's all about money on the Western side.
Yeah, I
All
was going to
about money.
say, people really seem to manage a lot in ancient times. I mean, not on everything, obviously, but I mean, natural. I do much better with natural than I don't take a lot of medication. But I
Right.
agree with you. Education, but we do lack here in the West on many things, on many levels.
Well, the interrelationship with nature, I think is primary. The connection with the indigenous people, and I believe that the Templars were they were in line with that. They were very much in line with the earth and the mother. I mean, the Templars that I spoke with in Portugal, one of the first things that we talked about was when we talked about Mary Magdalene and Jesus, and he said, the Templars were they were very reverent. They had a great deal of reverence for the mother of us all. And it was in the documentary,
Yes.
Joao talked about that in Portugal. But the reverence for the planet, for the mother, for this mother that has given us all life, and the mother that births us, and the mother goddess. And I do really believe that we need to bring that reverence back into our consciousness worldwide, so we have some respect for where we are.
I agree.
Planet that has given us so much. And the indigenous people live this way. This is their lifestyle.
It is.
Basis.
No, it is. It's very much about the land and the elements and everything that, Mother Earth gives you. Absolutely.
Exactly.
The Templars, I believe, were, and I've heard this one time before from a good friend. She said, they were the keepers of the knowledge of life.
Absolutely.
And so many people, first off, I mean, most people can't even get the difference between a Crusader and a Templar, which just throws me into a whole other place. But to look at a group of people, they came from all walks of life and literally were handed, it's almost like the key of knowledge to all life. It was sacred. They had an understanding of it.
Yes.
And they evolved it. They evolved with it. And, all it takes is one bad apple to come and ruin everything. But I was going to leave that right there. So to avoid a little bit of hate mail, every time I make certain comments, I lose about 20 social media friends.
That's all. I lost 50 on the last one.
Yes. So, but it's quite an honor.
Well, that they did, though. They carried this wisdom forward, and I believe that this was part of their agenda, was to continue it. There's been spiritual groups, prophets, people all through history that have continued to bring the spiritual belief system and these spiritual practices and concepts forward through history throughout our entire existence on this planet. And I think the Templars were just doing their part during that time frame to carry it forward into the Renaissance period, which, then we had Leonardo da Vinci, and we had these great minds that carried it forward. And then we had the Masons, and they carried it forward, and all these other, Rosicrucians, and it's continued to come forward to today. So basically what's happened is each one of these groups of people have carried this information, the spiritual information and wisdom forward. So they were wisdom keepers in that sense. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people figure, again, history only tells you so much about it. Unfortunately, this is what they did. This is why they were in Jerusalem. These 11 guys did all the miles and miles of protecting pilgrims, coming to the area, which I believe to a degree, but I think the rest of the Knights Hospitallers didn't really get a lot of credit for their part in all of that too. But at the end of the day, I love that the history is still alive. I love that people are now taking a bigger interest, because people felt really like, when you used to mention the Templars at one time, people were hateful.
Yeah.
Heretics, and they were hateful. And I mean, I saw this up to like 2 years ago, and I'm just like, okay, first off, you don't even know the difference between, again, a knight and a crusader. Don't speak. It's just, please just don't. Save us both the embarrassment. Okay. But now the people seem to be interested. They want to know, and it just paves the road for researchers and explorers like yourself to go and find the answers and to present them, and them actually be taken seriously.
Right. Yeah, there's no accident. It's like, my having to return to St. Baume. There's what I believe is universal timing. There's a certain timing for everything that has to happen at certain specific times.
I agree with you.
I didn't go into St. Baume that first time I was there because it was divine intervention that needed to happen at the time that it did.
Yes.
The same thing with the Templars. They had planted the seeds. They had done a tremendous amount. They had laid the groundwork, the foundation. There's a great deal of also speculation, and I personally believe that they laid sacred geometrical grids to raise the consciousness in the areas that they traveled to. So,
interesting.
I met a mathematician from the University of Brasilia in Moinho, just outside of Alta Paraíso.
Mm-hmm.
I was down there. I was to meet somebody else, but we couldn't, because that person wasn't home. So we ended up coming over here. And then I meet this professor from the University of Brasilia, and she's in the math department. And her personal research is sacred geometry and the Templars. Templars in that area.
Funny that. Yeah.
Right. And she proceeds to tell me that the Templars laid sacred geometrical grids in the area, and she thought that Alta Paraíso, San George, which is Saint George, by the way.
Yes.
Right. Moinho and Cavalcante created a triangle. It forms a triangle. And she stated that her research, she had found graffiti, and she found symbols that the Templars had left in specific places. And she believed that they laid a grid there. She called it magic, that they used magic to embed this consciousness into the place where we were in this specific area. And I know for a fact that the Templars in Portugal had a specific agenda. They welcomed all nationalities, all cultures, all religions, culture, economic, whatever. But when they conquered the Moors, they invited them in. When they conquered Islam, they invited them to stay. The Cathars, the Druids, there were Druids already there from, long time before. I found Druid sites there.
Wow, that's ancient.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Yes.
And also, when I was at Almoral Castle in Portugal, not many people realize it, but there were Neolithic. There was an area where it was obvious to me that there had been Neolithic. There was a grinding area that had been left by probably Neolithic culture.
Mm-hmm.
Templars often built their castles on places that were already power places. How did they know that?
That's right. That's right. Old temples and such, and ley lines, and
So
if they used a sage. I wonder if they used a sage in those days, because they were quite, known and accepted. They weren't tossed aside like later years.
I think that their inner group, their inner members were sages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I have to believe that. I can't explain it any other way. Is fast, going back to Alta Paraiso. So we have this grid that this woman is telling me about. And what you find in Alta Paraiso that you don't find anywhere else in South America is an area where you can walk down the street and run into 10 people from 10 different countries, and they're all coexisting and living together. If you walk 2 blocks, you may run into 20 or 30 people from different countries, different cultures, and different religious backgrounds. There are people from literally every country in the world in Alta Paraiso.
Unified.
It is beautiful. Talk about a holy grail.
Funny that. So what is the Holy Grail to them?
Well, if the Holy Grail has anything to do with the bloodline, what comes to mind for me, there's been artifacts and symbols found in India now, and Ethiopia, and Armenia, which is now Turkey, parts of Turkey that were Armenian.
Mm-hmm.
So what were they doing? What were they doing? Were they colonizing these areas? Were they expanding the bloodline?
That's a good question, or a good theory. Expanding the bloodline.
That's what came into my mind. Why did they? And this happened at the time when they're being persecuted in Europe, and Portugal is being threatened. Portugal is literally Porto de Grael, Freddie Sola
Yes.
about these fluent Portuguese, and he, decoded that anagram, and so Portugal is being threatened. The Catholic Church has total, complete power in Europe. You can't do anything. You can't do anything without the permission from the Catholic Church at this point in time. So we have the Catholic Church joining up with this king all of a sudden, right, in 1307, and the Pope is allowing the, King Philip the Fair, which is kind of ironic.
So much.
Anyway, to annihilate, right? To round up and annihilate the Templars. And the writing's on the wall for these guys. I'm sure they saw that coming. Mm-hmm. I sure they did. You sense when something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the time when they took off to India, they took off to North America, they went to South America, into Brazil. There may even be other places in South America that I haven't even found yet. I don't know, that somebody else might find. But they were in Ethiopia, we do know that. They were in Armenia, we do know that. I found several temple crosses in that area, in Armenia. So why would they do that? There's one explanation. Yes, they wanted to expand trade, but that doesn't really make sense completely when you're thinking about, an order that's being annihilated. And
did they really care about trade?
Right. Why are they expanding trade when they don't have a home base anymore?
Right.
Or they're about to not have a home base anymore.
Right.
It doesn't really explain that. It doesn't really give you.
It doesn't.
No. It doesn't. So, I was sitting there brainstorming one night, and I'm thinking about, well, what could they possibly have been doing? Well, I know that in Brazil, that they intermarried once they were disbanded officially in 1312. they married into the indigenous culture that was there in Alto Paraíso and Moino. And I would imagine they probably did the same in Scotland too, because
I think they did the same here in Canada.
exactly.
And yes. Yes.
So if they did it in Canada and they did it in South America,
Yes.
and they more than likely did it here in the US as well.
Mm-hmm.
They probably did it in India, and they probably did it in Ethiopia and in Armenia as well. And there may be other places that we don't even know about yet. But I think that we're about to find out. I think
so.
I do. I believe that this is the time that all of this stuff is going to come up, because this is the time that all the secrets are being revealed. You know, even personally, I don't know if you experienced it, but I certainly have in this last few years. All this stuff is coming out of my DNA or whatever. And I'm having to deal with a lot of shadow work. You know, everybody's doing shadow work right now. And so is the earth. We're part of the earth. We have the same, we vibrate at the same frequency that dirt does.
I know, that's true.
That's so nice.
135 nanometers.
It's true.
135 nanometers is the same as dirt.
Oh my, that is so funny.
There's something to hold on to.
That was a huge revelation for me when I discovered that in 2004.
It's almost like a great purge. It's almost like now that we're into this new age.
Absolutely.
We're into the age of Aquarius now, right? And it's almost as though we have to purge the old and come in with the new. It's all new beginnings. And we have to sort of connect with the collective, but on a really positive level.
Absolutely. And, you know, basic tenet of physics is that energy is never destroyed. So what's happening is this negative energy is being transformed. And the great metaphor for me is what happened in St. Bone in that grotto, right? That was a huge, that I've always gone back to that.
That was, it's pretty mind-blowing. Just to say the least, it was.
Completely transformed the energy in a space. It was an amazing experience for me. So we can do that. And I was just a conduit. I mean, I was just simply a conduit. But we have the power to do these things. And people, I think, are becoming more and more aware of their own spiritual abilities and gifts. And you know, we're talking about it. People are talking about it. 20 years ago, nobody talked about any of this stuff.
No, they did in the 60s. I think it's, you know, it's all that DMT and stuff. Everybody was really tuned in. And then it just sort of phased itself out slowly. By the time you hit the 80s, everything was just done. It was just blah.
And, you know, everybody from well, not everybody, but a lot of people from the 60s had become CEOs and stuff.
It's true.
Yeah, but 20 years ago, you're talking about mainstream internet, social media.
That's true.
Became
Everything changed.
Groups on Facebook and all these ways of interconnecting with like-minded people just made it easy. So it's one of the plus sides of social media.
But it's also turned us all into drones. You know, we're so busy. Seriously, we're so busy doing this all the time. We're watching everything go by. You know, we're misinformed. We're easily distracted.
That's true.
I stopped that a year ago. I don't have my phone on me when I'm moving around. I don't have my phone beside me unless, well, I could, because I mean, it's awful. My dad passed away in November, so I didn't have that constant need to be connected to a phone, to the point where I had an Apple Watch and a phone. God forbid I miss a phone call that he's not well. And after he passed away, it was almost like the freedom of the internet. And I believe it's a lot easier to take things in this way rather than being online, you know, going back to old books and going back to nature. Like you said earlier, you know, Templars were grounded, extremely well grounded. Right. They didn't have that distraction. They had focus.
Well, they walked hundreds, thousands of miles.
Yeah.
They walked
Hmm.
all over Europe. They walked, I suspect, all over South America, North America. Once they got off the ship, they walked. They
Mhm.
walked everywhere. I recently came across some information from a gentleman from a clan in Scotland that he actually lives here in the U.S. But his clan goes back to before pre-Templar times, and
Wow. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big wow.
Well, what's interesting is that his great 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 grandfather, born in 1232, died in 1290, had an ancient Portuguese, actually a Brazilian, indigenous Brazilian nickname.
Well then,
Hmm.
that is interesting, isn't it? Like
Documented,
why would that be?
documented history.
Yeah.
And he shared this information with me, so I'm going to be following up on that research when I go back into Scotland. Hopefully, I don't. We'll see when I can actually get there. But
I know.
I've been trying to get back. I've been trying to set up an itinerary to go
A
there.
tour. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But after my Brazil trip, I'm hoping that travel starts to open back up.
Hmm.
I'm going to check into that. And so now what I'm looking for is that coat of arms anywhere in Portugal. So when I go back to Portugal, I'm going to be looking for that name, that family name, the coat of arms, as I think I may have seen it in the convent de Cristo, but I'm not positive. So I have to go back and do some checking. But it tells me, okay, so, I mean, yes, they took ships, but they also walked, they walked thousands of miles, and they were grounded with the earth.
Hmm.
They were really, really grounded. I mean, they were farmers, and they were into animal husbandry. They were into banking. I mean, they were into all sorts of stuff, but they were grounded,
Hmm.
very grounded with the earth.
Hmm. Yeah. They were so exceptional in so many ways. Do you think the orders of today are as the orders of yesteryear, so to speak? Because life is very different, and I've met people from all walks of life in many different orders. I'll leave that right there.
Mhm.
And some of them more focused than others.
Well, I think it's the same as it was then, because you had your core Templars, then you had, you just had several different types of people that were all Templars. I mean, they all had a main focus back then, which was, to bring back Christianity into the Holy Land. I mean, they had that major focus until Acre. And when Acre fell, then that's when it started falling apart for them in Europe as well.
Yeah.
But I think that with any group of people, people have asked me a zillion times, well, are the Masons, what's your opinion on the Masons? What's your opinion on the Rosicrucians? What's your opinion on this and that? And I say, there's good people and bad people in every organization. And I don't mean that necessarily bad. I just mean people who may not have all the answers, or they may have a different motive for being involved with that group. And you're going to have a variety no matter what group you're talking about, because that's human nature. And it's our job to develop a certain discernment. And I think that's one of the things that this COVID lockdown, whatever you want to call it, I think that's really helped us to sit back and develop discernment. There's a lot of choices to make that are really serious choices right now.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree.
And like you're talking about, we're being bombarded with fake news, and the media. We're just
tons,
bombarded with a lot of garbage.
Tons of it. Yeah.
We're getting GMOs in our food. We're getting, chemtrails, which I happen to be a believer in. We're just being bombarded. I told my husband the other day, it was probably safer during the Neanderthal times. All you had to deal with was
it's true. Get out there and get me a mammoth, anything, like mammoth, whatever was creeping around at that time. But
bears.
I know. No, I had only asked because a friend of mine saw a T-shirt on a man today that said, the way Masons were supposed to be.
Oh,
And
who
I
would wear
thought,
something like that?
yeah, and I'm like, that's a very unusual thing to wear. And he went, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
Maybe
so
he
I'm
lays
thinking,
bricks.
yeah.
maybe.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe it's a whole lot of Mason. You know, I don't know.
human nature, getting back to human nature, is like,
Yeah.
we're all at different levels of our spiritual growth. And,
Mm.
and I do believe that the Templars understood the deeper initiatory aspects of the spiritual death.
Yes.
I had an NDE. It happens for people different ways. In Egypt, this was part of the initiatory experience, was to swim down into the pool full of alligators. You didn't know where the exit was. You had to stay down there until you went through the exit, and you didn't know what you were going to come out in. You didn't know. But you faced death because you had no choice. You had to actually come to terms with death and no longer fear it, so that you could keep going. So you could find that, and I'm sure there were a lot of people who didn't find it. But
It's got to be a better way than alligators, like ayahuasca or something.
Yeah, I've never been one to fear death
No,
ever.
no.
I've always felt like it's just a continuation.
Yeah.
But once I had my daughter, it was like, oh, I
It's
don't want to
different.
miss
You fear
anything,
leaving. Yeah,
leaving her behind. And
death is
because
never a
my
thing.
mom passed away
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Right.
So, I was so young, and I just think, oh my God, I pray that doesn't happen to her, for her to feel that pain. But I'm more than happy to move
To
forward.
the next level.
And
Yes.
I've had 4 NDEs, and very different, all very different. And maybe that could be why, because one was very young. That could be why.
I have to say, we have to do a station
Our
ID.
station ID, yes.
We'll be
Thank
heading
you.
into another NT.
Yes.
Joe's
Well, he put all those ns all over the screen.
I think, yeah, because the hint, yeah.
You're listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle Desrochers and Amelia Pisano, and tonight our special guest is Dr. Kathleen N. Ball. We are live on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM in New Orleans. We are the United Public Radio, and this broadcast has been partially sponsored by the good folks at Folgers Coffee. Thank you, Folgers.
Yay. So there we go. Business is done now. Back to the fun stuff. Yeah. So what's next for you then? You're going back to Brazil. Yeah. You're planning to go back overseas. What are you hoping to find? Which dots are you looking to connect up, hopefully?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is get back into that cave and really do some close-up photography of the glyphs. Now that I know there's glyphs in there, and just get photos of all of them and go all the way back into the cave once we get these spiders and bats, to just take a little vacation. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go back into there and explore. I know that these are no longer used as gold mines, but that's what it was initially, which I talked about last time on the show.
Yes.
Right. So they were initially gold mines. So there's quartz crystal, crushed quartz crystal all over the entrance, all over the place.
Wow.
We're also, I had ordered a metal detector, a really good metal detector before I left Alta Paraíso last time, that has arrived, and I have a friend that's holding it for me. So we are going to be going back and doing some just surface over the whole surface of that whole area between the cave and between Leonia, who, if you saw the film, Leonia was the lady that had the little ranch that's down below.
You were hoping to get on her property, right?
Right. So we want to do maybe even some preliminary excavation. We have to get permission from the landowners, etc. But I'm going to go in with the metal detector, so maybe we can kind of get a little bit more direction where we want to actually dig. But I'm convinced, I'm certain that there has to be artifacts in the area. The Templars were there. there's got to be something left. There's got to be
Mhm.
something behind.
Oh,
And if not,
tools, even,
that's-
anything. They would not have stopped. I mean, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I don't believe they would have stopped their form of worship or ritual.
I don't either.
Yeah, I think they would have continued it, even if minimally, which means they would have needed something
Mhm.
to use in these rituals.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, there is even a chance people have asked me, do you think the Grail is there? Well, the cup that everyone's been looking for. Do you think that there's a Grail cup there? I said, I have no idea. But if they were there, and there are probably several hundred of them,
Mm.
um, if they were that many there, I'm sure they continued with their spiritual practices and rituals. I mean, without a doubt, it was a lifestyle for them,
Yeah,
and going to
exactly.
suddenly give that up, right? You just
Yes.
don't. You just don't change that quickly.
No.
Don't
No, if
change.
anything, you would have maybe brought other people in.
Exactly. Exactly. And an interesting Leomar, the guide that took us in, he's a descendant of indigenous people there, and very possibly a descendant of Templars. His family owns that land. They had owned it for hundreds of years.
Mhm.
But the first thing he said about the cave to us, to Adele Good and myself, she was with me when I discovered the cave, was he said, "Do you want to go to this cave? This is where the old women go to pray and do magic." This magic is a big word over there in
Right.
Brazil, right? And we said, "Oh yeah, sure." And we wanted to cool off too, because it was really hot that day when we discovered that. We were out there tromping through the woods, and we're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you see from the film. I mean, we're literally in the middle of nowhere.
Right, right, right. So what is like their form of magic? Do you think this is something that was passed down
I think
from
so.
the Templar forefathers? And
And
because let's face it,
it,
they had some stuff together. Like,
well, it appeared to me that this may even have been passed down through the female line, because he
but there were
specifically
female
said,
Templars, yes.
yeah,
Right?
Isn't there?
there
Yes.
was a whole preceptory in Spain that was headed by a woman Templar. She was
Mm.
actually, yeah, she had that title, preceptor,
Right.
and she trained women Templars in Spain. And then where was another country? There was in Austria. Um, I met a woman Templar when I was at that procession in
Mm.
Tomar in 2019.
Yeah.
And she indicated that there had been a convent of women Templars also. And I think it was Austria. It might have been Austria. I
Mhm.
have to look at my notes for that one. But getting back to Alta
Mhm.
Paraiso, yeah, the women, he said specifically, the old women go there to pray and do magic. Cast spells, whatever it was he thought they did, I don't know. But he said they were still doing it. They were still doing it today, back then in 2015. So it
Mm.
it leads me to believe that there were some rituals that were passed down, maybe through the mother, through the line of the women. Um, I don't, I really
Yeah,
don't know.
it's
I'll know
curiosity.
Well, I'll know more when the more I interview, because I've been now to El Paraiso 4 times, and so every time I go, it's like I'm embraced more and
Well,
more.
they get to know you. They trust you. They will
Mhm.
entrust maybe their secrets to you. Maybe
Right?
they'll ask you to come and do some magic.
I don't know.
Huh?
That would.
Wouldn't that be fun?
It's an amazing. It's a tremendously spiritual place. And
Yeah.
on my first, what was it? It was my first trip in 2015. I met the 2 town shamans.
Yes.
Mhm.
So that happened, and I went to those 3 spiritual places, the 3 waterfalls, and did the spiritual
Oh,
meditations that I
how
was
did that
told
feel?
to do by the first shaman. And
Yes.
yeah, so I mean, each place it was a different experience. There was a vertical light experience, and then there was a horizontal experience, and then there was an expansion experience that I had while I was there. So these places, from what I understand from the shaman and from just the people that live there, they talk about it. These areas, that these waterfalls and these mountains were sacred places for the indigenous cultures for thousands of years. They had been conducting ceremonies at these sites for thousands of years.
Wow.
Which is why the Amazonian tribes still come there. I'm certain of it.
Right.
There is energy there in this whole area. The Chapada National Area is really, it just emanates this spirituality. It draws people. It really draws people. So
that brings to another question. You found this cave. There's at least another 3. Do you think? I mean, it would make sense. Do you think they spread out beyond, like, different areas of Brazil? Like, when you're done here, where do you think they may have gone after that? And are you going to attempt to push out that way?
Well, I'm going to focus in Alta Paraíso and Moinho and Cavalcante and São Jorge for right now. I don't know how long it's going to take me to complete that research, but I have a lot on my plate just with that.
Yes.
Excavating around the areas of these 3 caves, photographing them. And, I would really like to do a DNA study of the people in that area.
Yes.
And I really think that
I think you'd find your validation.
Yeah. Because the rumor is everyone, when you're there, everybody talks about it. We're all descendants of Templars. They lived here, they colonized here, they all talk about it. Everybody talks about it.
Right.
It's not a big deal to them. It's just a given. It's not a revelation. And how that has never gotten out to the world, I don't know.
I guess it's one of those things, if you don't ask. Right? You found the cross, so you're like, wait, something magical happened here. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't come across anything, I guess it's just business as usual. Right.
And the Portuguese people in general are people that are very pragmatic. They're very practical. They're very practical people. And in Brazil, I mean, it really, the people, if you can't eat it, if you can't make money doing it, if it doesn't build you a home, if it doesn't enhance your life today, right now, your material life, it really doesn't matter. They have very few historians in Brazil that really get down. I mean, it's happening more and more now. I've connected with a few archaeologists in Brazil now. And so they really are starting to take an interest in these things in their country. But until recently, that hasn't been the case. They really didn't care a whole lot about their history. It wasn't important. They talk about it. It's every day. It's like, oh yeah, my great-grandfather was a Templar. My family had this land, and this was Templar land, and they all talk about it, but it's no big deal. They don't really care. Not important to them, again, because if it doesn't enhance their life in some way.
Yeah. And I guess too, they, going to this new country, you just want to lay down your arms. You just want to just maybe live a normal life, because how many of your brothers and sisters have you lost?
Right.
Like that's really, that would be a lot to take. I think you just want to obviously keep up your rituals because it's your belief, it's your faith, it's it's in your core. But I think maybe you do get to that point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to take a spouse, right there. That's a whole like life-changing event for these guys. And I'm going to take a spouse, I'm going to have a family, and I'm just going to farm, and I'm just going to, that part of my life is just, but where are the swords? Where are the arms and metal, everything that they came with?
Yeah, it has to be there. It has to be there. And so, that's what I'm going to be on the hunt for next, is artifacts and
graveyard, cemetery. I mean, was it custom for knights to be buried with their swords?
Well, I've heard, evidence both ways.
Right.
that they really didn't. I mean, they were very humble people to begin with. So
Mhm.
typically, a Templar grave wasn't even marked,
Mhm.
and whether they were buried with their sword or if it was passed down to the next generation,
You just don't see many.
you don't see very many. So
No.
it leads us to believe that that they probably were buried with the swords. But
Mhm.
we really don't know because we have so little documentation that came forward because they were being, they were being hunted. They had to destroy everything, and nobody wanted to be affiliated with. Nobody wanted to admit they were a Templar. They didn't want their family history. Nobody wanted that known, and this was certainly the case in South America, all of South America. During my research in the Rosicrucian Library a couple of years ago, which just opened up, thank goodness,
Yay.
just opened up last Friday.
Oh, wow.
Back in to do some more research, but what I found out is there's a whole book on the Templars being hunted by the Catholic Church in South America. So in the 1500s, they were hunted down and they were annihilated. So the families, they shut up. They didn't talk about it. They didn't want to be affiliated. They didn't want anybody. They didn't want their neighbors. They didn't want anybody to know that they were descendants. They didn't want any relics. They didn't want, so things would have been buried. I think that things would have been buried.
Mm,
Things would have been hidden.
yes.
You know.
I'm
Another,
surprised that when Columbus went over,
mhm.
maybe he found something, maybe he didn't. Cumming, I believe that he married into a Templar family, but there's a lot of questionable stuff about him that I'm not going to get into today.
Right.
Another show.
Right,
Yes.
another show, exactly,
A
Amelia.
whole other show.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother show.
Yeah, because you're coming in with Templar crosses, white crosses on your sails. You're clearly coming in representing,
Yeah,
to me, the obvious.
right,
Was there a connection made at that point?
right.
You
And
know,
the fact that Brazil was initially considered an island and called the island of Veracruz, which means the true cross. Right.
yeah, well, right
So
there.
this was before it was named Brazil. It was just called Veracruz, the island of Veracruz. And I think that the reason why, and I'm one of my guest speakers, one of my the people from Alta Paraíso, Brazil, João Batista Ramos, from the castle. He created a castle, the Camelot Castle in Alta Paraíso. There's
Nice.
castle. That's the other bizarre thing of Alta Paraíso, right? We have Camelot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? You have a mix of everything there, apparently.
They do. You can find a little bit of everything there.
Mhm.
But he recreated this Camelot in that area, and he was a sort of a not. He didn't go to the university to become a historian, but he did his own history, and he agreed with me. He thought that the Templars came in the 1300s. He had found his family members. He's a descendant of a Templar family himself.
Mhm.
And he said, that his family members came in the 1400s. So at that point, they had to have been Knights of Christ, right? They could
Yes,
be. The
that's
Templars
right.
founded, the Knights of Christ were created in 1314. So there was a little bit of overlap in Portugal. But
Or
anyways,
the Hospitallers.
pardon?
Or the Hospitallers. Well, Red Cross, true. So
Right,
depending.
powers, right?
Yeah.
Well, they were a distinctly different order. But
Yes.
they all came together in the Holy Land. They all had to work together in the Holy Land.
Yes.
But there was also a lot of their lands and a lot of their castles and whatnot were given to the Hospitallers
Yes.
after 1312, after the disbanding. They had been given those lands and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think their initial agendas were different. That when the Templar order had a specific agenda, and I mean it was pretty obvious. They went right straight into Jerusalem And immediately they moved into the stables where the Solomon's, his old stables above the Temple Mount. That's the first thing. That's the first place they went, and that's where their headquarters was.
Right.
Right. That's where they stayed. So,
Mm.
right. And there was 11 of them. And they were supposedly to protect all these thousands of pilgrims that came in.
Wow.
That's what I mean when I read Freddie's book. I'm like, you see, right there, we're just starting, and right there, there's all this sense being made. So, but I think I think it's a beautiful journey. I'm so grateful, to yourself, and Wayne and Gretchen and Sean and Carl and Hamilton and like everybody involved. I really am, grateful to you all, because it's a lot of time out of your lives, as much as it's a passion, and there's a drive that just keeps you moving. It's still a lot of time out of all of your lives, but you're just bringing it all together, and I'm grateful for it, because it needs to be said, and it's very near and dear to me, and it's just magic to me.
It really is magic that it's coming together so beautifully right now.
Yes.
And all of these people are coming together, like we talked about before.
Mhm.
We are coming together. I'm a part of the North American Templar.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah, Gretchen invited me, and I
Very
absolutely,
nice.
and I
Yes.
will be going to Wisconsin to meet up with Wayne Murphy as well.
Yeah, we spoke
Right.
briefly last night, and it was just exciting.
Yeah, we spoke. We had a nice little phone conference last week. I think it was the week before last.
Yes.
And he's got some things coming up that sound really exciting.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I will also be going into Wisconsin just to see for myself. I want to see what they're looking at. It could also help me to recognize things in Brazil as well. So, everything that helps. It's like we all feed off each other. We all feed off each other. We all get information from each other that gives us all personal revelations, and our specific individual research is expanded as a result of, our
Absolutely.
connection with each other.
All the pieces of the puzzle
It's
that come
exciting.
together. It's a team.
It's so exciting, honestly. I can't even wait to see what you guys all come up with. So it's like I was saying to Wayne, and I've said it to Gretchen when she reached out, and to Sean. It's like we're going to have to do an episode with the gang,
Yeah.
and just talk North America, talk
Right. That
all
would
of
be
this.
awesome. Just talk North America. I really, I feel like that's really Wayne's thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've spoke. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm more than happy to give any kind of information or
Mhm.
advice or whatever he wants from me. I told him, I'm at your disposal.
Mhm.
I would love, like I said, I'd love to see what's there. And I think there's a lot more. I like every single location that we're finding these things now. There's a lot more stuff, and I have an agenda with 9 more documentaries in this series that we've put together. We've decided we're going to do.
Wow, that's a lot. That's fantastic. So tell us about the series before we have to finish off. Just
Okay.
advertise, advertise, advertise. Tell us.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is return to Brazil, of course, and go back into Portugal to go follow some leads that I've, especially with this one family,
Mhm.
from 1232 to 1290. I really want to see if I can make a solid connection with a coat of arms in Portugal, because if that connection, that would be a wonderful connection, because there's actually a port named after this man's, they call it his appellation, which is a nickname, basically.
Hmm.
Port in Brazil, it's named after him.
Oh, that's something.
Very interesting.
That's actually really something.
Very interesting. So I'll be going back into Portugal, and then I'll also be going into Jerusalem, following up on some leads that I have there that could be really interesting. Um, I'm not going to get into it completely.
Of course. That's okay. We'll wait for
And
the documentary.
yeah,
We
and
can
then
wait,
from
kind
there
of.
we have gone into Ethiopia, back into Armenia, well, Turkey, which was previously Armenia, and
Mhm.
Ethiopia, and we'll be going into India, back into Scotland.
You're going to retrace your steps, basically, right? And
I'm going to
yeah,
retrace their steps and
I like that.
and see what comes out of that, and see what comes out of each place that I go to. Because when I go to, when I go to these countries, I connect with the people. I'm there for a month. I
Wow.
spend a month every time I go. And I like to connect with people, boots on the ground, live with the people, eat with the people, everything. Just really embrace their culture and learn everything I can learn about, about their area and what's going on, and any stories, myths, anything that I can pick up on about the Templars, and what they know about the Templars, having been there.
Mhm.
So,
That's
so this
fantastic.
is this is what's going to be unfolding in the next couple of years of this series, and my agent's working on it, and working on funding. I'm going to be funding initially, first few trips myself, just because I want to do it. I'm not going to wait for the,
Yes.
continue to do it. But
I
she.
think the more you find, people will just come forth with it.
Mhm.
I really do think so.
Well, as as everything's unfolded so easily the way it is now, I mean, I just know that it's going to happen. I just know that everything, when I need it, it's going to be there. And,
It will.
so I'm not concerned about it. I'm not worried about it at all. And we did make a nice, tidy sum from the Gaia, from the documentary. So
Very nice. Further the research.
yeah,
Mhm.
Perfect.
so that
Perfect.
is going to fund, the
Mhm.
next 4 trips. So.
And your book is being released when, ballpark?
As soon as we get this this editing process,
The tedious part.
the tedious part, yeah, it should go pretty quickly. Actually, this part should go pretty quickly, because I'm working with a really, really great publishing editor. She lives in the UK, and she's been doing professional editing for publishers for the past 30-40 years. I mean,
Oh, excellent. Right.
yeah,
Excellent.
we have a couple publishers in mind already, so it shouldn't take too long. I'm looking at maybe a couple months.
Oh,
Good for
perfect.
you.
So
Looking
yeah, be out
forward
by
to
the
it.
summer read, poolside read. No,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So tell everybody how they can find you.
So you can find me on my website is templarsinbrazil.com, and then Facebook, it's Templars in Brazil, or you can find me at Kathleen Ann Ball on Facebook. And my email is templarsinbrazil@gmail.com. You can
There
reach,
we go.
you can reach me at any of those places. And if you sign up on the website, you can actually get updates.
I
You'll actually
have.
get updates as to when the book's coming out.
Yes.
We've been, nominated, selected for a number of awards now, in addition to the ones we've already received. So those will be posted. Any lectures that I'll be doing this next year. We have a trip going to Egypt. As a matter of fact, I have
Nice.
women that
Wow.
I'm taking back to Egypt. I used to take a trip every year into Egypt and take a group of women,
Mhm.
as an initiatory type thing. And I didn't do it. I think the last one I did was in 2019. But anyway,
Mm.
I'm going to resume that. I'm taking a group of women in 2022, which is going to be posted in the next week.
Very nice.
Ironing out I have my itinerary. We're ironing out the last little bit of the details, and that'll be posted. So that's going to be coming up in March of 2022. So
Very
we're
nice.
following the path of Nefertiti, which should be really interesting.
Very nice. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, again, such a pleasure having you on. Wealth of information, a whole bunch of new information. And I mean, I know you're coming back on with Sean Williamson in
Right.
August, just for those listening. And we are going to do something with the whole Team Templar North America also. So those of you guys who are listening to Dr. Kathleen Ann Ball tonight, yes, she's going to come back. So with a whole bunch of new fun stuff. So anyway, thank you again for taking the time to join us tonight. It was a pleasure as always.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. And it's wonderful to meet with you too, Amelia, in our virtual Zoom here. Finally, it's really nice to meet you as well, and to work with you again too, Michelle. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
I really enjoy your show. I find it very enjoyable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just love to offer that platform for people such as yourself.
Yeah.
There's a huge listenership, millions of people a week tune in. So it's just, I guess, doing our part.
Right. Well, we all have our parts, I'm a firm believer in that. And I was talking to a girlfriend about that the other day. We all have our little part.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a part in what's going on, right now. We're raising consciousness on this planet right now.
Yes, very important.
And that has a ripple effect, and it keeps emanating out further and further and further.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? I mean, I can just only imagine what this planet can look like in 10 years.
Here's to hoping. We will drink to that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Pleasure. Have yourself a great evening, great weekend, and stay safe and keep up on all those excursions. I love watching you just going out and having these wonderful experiences because we're locked down here. So but thank you again.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've come to another end of a fantastic segment here in the Outer Realm. Thank you all for tuning in. Big thank you to our special guest, Dr. Kathleen Ann Ball. Huge thank you to Folgers Coffee for partially sponsoring tonight's show. Big thank you to Joe Montaldo, who's basically taking care of things behind the scenes. Please remember to go by the UFO Paranormal Radio Network's YouTube channel. And we have a new one called UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. So go and look that up and give it a little bit of a like and subscribe, please. So while you're there, don't forget about us on the Outer Realm on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to see a specific guest or topic, or perhaps you'd be interested in being a guest yourself, please email us at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. Again, theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. So tune in next week as we have 2 more amazing guests. Well, I'll say 3, actually. Wednesday, June Lundgren returns to the show. She's going to be discussing dark and demonic entities, which is pretty awesome considering she's a pet psychic and got to talk all fuzzy stuff last time. It was amazing. Thursday is a return of 2 of our favorites, Hamilton White and Carl Cookson from Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. Will be coming back and discussing more on the Tomar Horde, as well as some other projects that they have in the works. So until then, Amelia and I thank you. Have a good night. Have a good, safe weekend. And speaking of weekend, just got to plug it. Don't forget that Joe Montaldo and I will be doing the Gray Zone Uncensored every Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 to 7 p.m. Central. Thank you and good night.
All right.